Last week I had the pleasure of interviewing Sabrina Coppola, who is the founder and clinical director of Social Butterfly Counseling. Sabrina said that since the Parkland School incident, she has had an increase of children coming into her office experiencing higher levels of panic attacks, anxiety, and depression. The practice drills alone in schools are making children fearful at an alarming rate. Thank you, Sabrina, for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me back.
Not a great subject, but one that's very important for us to talk about.
Yes.
Now, these drills that are happening in the school, they are preparing our children for emergencies. Can you elaborate on those?
Sure. You know, here in the state of New Jersey, our schools are mandated to have 2 drills a month for all of our children. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that it's the faculty as well as the students that are experiencing this day in and day out. For generations, we've experienced drills. Most commonly, we hear about fire drills, but in more recent news, we're hearing buzzwords like lockdown drills or active shooter drills. And I think that those buzzwords are raising some fear and anxiety in both children and parents.
Of course.
And so it's 2 times a month. Children are experiencing drills within the schools for a variety of different types of emergencies to prepare them. And you know, here in our country, in the last 50, give or take, days, we've experienced 17 school shootings.
Oh my God.
So you know, what we were often preparing for that may have been a tragic rare occurrence, it's now become a tragic reality of how our children are at times at risk, and these drills are designed to prepare them for emergencies.
Right.
and
So they're necessary.
absolutely,
But they are creating fear and anxiety
At
for
times.
the children sometimes.
absolutely.
And for the parents.
And it's all in the delivery and,
Yeah.
and how we communicate the purpose of why we have these drills. And again, the purpose of practicing a drill is to prepare for an emergency. And
Right.
the more we know, the more we can prepare and perform
Right.
at our best.
So our children obviously are different ages and experiencing these things. So can you give us some tips how to help them at the different ages?
Absolutely. When we think about children, I'm going to break it out into 4 segments. Preschool, elementary, middle school, and then high school. When you think about a preschooler, 3 to 5, elementary years, maybe 5 to 10, middle school years, 11 to 13, and then high school, 14 to 18. I think it's important to acknowledge that we as parents need to just pause. If we are feeling scared,
Yes.
worried, nervous, sad, we don't want to project or place all of our stuff, all of our thoughts and feelings onto our child. And I'm not suggesting that we don't show how human we are.
Yes.
I'm not suggesting that we hide our feelings, but the way in which we deliver and our emotions and the way that we communicate them, our children take cue from us.
Yes.
So when we think about a 3 to 5-year-old, our preschoolers, we want to meet them where they're at while staying calm.
Okay.
Perhaps kneel down, there should not be any technology around us, and ask open-ended questions. Never assume what they know, ask what they know.
Okay.
So who, what, where, when. I try not to ask the why questions because we don't want a child to feel like they did something wrong, although the child may ask, why did this happen?
Right.
For our elementary school age children, the 5 to give or take 10, the same concepts still apply. Again, we need to stay calm and meet our children where they're at and acknowledge that by the time we hit elementary to middle school years, the children have more access to information.
Yes.
So again, we as parents need to stay calm, ask open-ended questions, and acknowledge that our children have questions themselves, and we need to be prepared to answer them in age-appropriate ways.
Yeah, yeah. And what about, the older kids?
Mm-hmm. There's a whole lot of thoughts and feelings for our high schoolers, because it's their peers that have more times than not been victim to these traumatic events. So again, staying calm, giving your child, for our older children, permission to be angry, to be scared, and to acknowledge that we can communicate about this, and it's okay to also engage in conversation about how our older kids can take a more active role within our community, with advocacy. And I see a lot of kids right now that are writing about this in different types of publications, are marching, are walking out, are protesting. So there's different ways that our older kids can have their voice be heard, writing to our government, and speaking about their thoughts and feelings about topics like gun control and safety measures in our schools.
I like what you said about not assuming what they know.
Yes.
And it's important for us to not allow our younger children to see the visuals. Right? And can you just tell us how that may impact them?
Seeing the visuals.
Yes.
And there's a concept called vicarious trauma. So you can be vicariously traumatized by images that you see. For instance, a younger child developmentally may not have the capacity to understand when they see an image, especially a video that may be on a loop. They may not have the developmental capacity to understand what they are actually seeing. And as children, we are designed to internalize and believe that the world revolves around us. So a child may think that is happening to them, or that can happen to them, which will increase their anxiety and instill fear within them. When we are trying to decrease our child's anxiety and create an environment or a forum for open communication, having the technology at the table while we're talking can be detrimental. It doesn't necessarily help the cause of trying to talk about what is happening in our home. How are the members of our family reacting to these traumatic events that are being regularly exposed on media, whether that be news, on television, newspapers that are maybe being delivered to the home, and then even more times than not, social media. And the scrolling.
And I don't think that we as parents sometimes realize how much our children are absorbing if we have the local news on. Or the papers out. They are aware of these things. And one of the things, I did bring it up with my daughter, and it's uncomfortable. I didn't want to bring it up, but I wanted to know what they knew or how they felt. And one of the things my daughter said was, well, that would never happen to us, right? So, of course, I said no. It wouldn't, because I want to shield her from ever thinking that it could, but how scary that she does think she's in that bubble that wouldn't, be affected.
It's such a delicate balance, because as moms, and I have to say, I often do the same thing as a mom, and the truth is that you said no, and you said it confidently. And that's another piece to this puzzle is, again, our children take cues from us. So if we can communicate in a confident and competent way, that is so helpful in reassuring our children that the adults in your life, we got this. You're safe. But we don't always know that. So you said no so confidently, and that's so great for your baby. but do you really know that? And that's the part. So we're here right now talking about children.
Yeah.
But the other piece to this puzzle is, well, how do we help keep our adults, the adults in our lives, and their fear and their worries and their anxiety, how do we also help maintain that and keep that
because
down?
I'll tell you, I'm starting to have fear where I didn't have it.
As do I.
Yes.
As do I. And, you know, at Social Butterfly Counseling, we not only work with children, but we work with adults and the parents of those children. And I have to say, I work with a lot of teachers.
Yeah, I bet.
So, you know, we're talking about lockdown drills and active shooter drills, but it's also these teachers who are moms and dads and educators, but they're also shielders and protectors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it's a lot on their shoulders.
Is also, you know, and anxiety is also rising.
Absolutely. So we have talked a little bit about technology, how it has the impact, but I'd like to delve into that a little bit more about technology and social media and how our kids are using that and have access to it.
Sure. Again, going back to the different developmental ages, it depends on how old the child is.
Yeah.
For our younger children, like the middle school and younger, having emotionally available parents is so incredibly important. When I say parents, I mean any caregiver. And being able to engage in a conversation with their caregiver without the technology around. Because there's so much information that is being thrown our way, it's overstimulating.
Yeah.
And it's affecting us as children and adults in ways that I don't even know that we know the depth of.
I'm sure.
So, you know, to answer your question, how is technology affecting us? I think it depends on a family by family basis, but if we can empower our families to turn it down, to limit the amount of access to technology that we have, I think that we will find that the impact that we're seeing now with anxiety levels rising, fear rising, and at times panic rising, we may find that those numbers, those instances may come down. Too much access to information is absolutely increasing fear.
Yeah. So my daughter, again, the other day, she had the iPad and she started looking at photos.
Yeah.
She wanted to look at the images, and I told her, don't look at those. And partly because of my conversation with you.
Okay.
So I knew the impact of it, which I don't want her looking anyway. But now I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I was honest with her how those images could affect her. Is that okay? I mean, can you share that with them?
Yes, yes. So, you know, earlier in our discussion we talked about trauma and, you know, for your, if is it okay if I use your daughter as an example?
Please.
Your daughter, very similar to many kids. How old is she?
She's 12.
12. So you have a 12-year-old, very similar, I'm sure, to many 12-year-olds here in the area. And having access to images like that I shouldn't say will, because there's no universal code to this, but for many kids it can increase the likelihood of them experiencing the trauma themselves. So, you know, thank goodness that your daughter wasn't actually at the school that experienced this trauma, but by seeing the images, it can have a lasting impression on her and her memory and her mind and her thoughts and her feelings. And things to look out for your daughter or for other children could be after seeing an image like that or after being exposed to a conversation like that, difficulty sleeping, loss of appetite, fear or expression of you know, being scared or nervous about separating from you, like going to school or going to an extracurricular activity. So, you know, to say, no, I don't want you seeing those images, always follow up that no with a why. It really isn't healthy for you to look at them over and over again, but I'm here for you. What questions do you have for me? And what are you curious about? And to the best of my ability, I will answer those questions. And then that's where you engage in that conversation.
Okay. So let's talk about now parents that want to shield their children from this. Because I understand that. You don't want to expose your children to this. But if you're not, and they're finding out in other ways, which they will, how is that impacting the child?
It's such an individualized question for each family, but I will say, there's a reason why there's a saying, ignorance is bliss. There is bliss in just avoiding.
Of course.
In that moment, and that's a Band-Aid. Avoidance 100% of the time will exacerbate or increase fear and anxiety. And you may not see it right there and then by avoiding a situation or a conversation in the moment, but maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next month, it's going to come up. So, my response to a parent that says, I'm just going to sweep this under the rug, we're not going to talk about this in our home, there's no reason that my child should be exposed to this. My response to this is, but she will be, or he will be, or they will be. And wouldn't you rather have some control over the dialogue and answering the questions that your child is curious about, rather than him or her hear it on the school bus or on the playground, or walking by at a friend's house on a play date and hearing CNN or Fox or whatever news station on in the background. So as parents, we don't have control over everything, but we do have control over some things, and by avoiding them, you're giving that power away. So if you have questions as a parent, call me, and I will help coach you through it, or I will give you resources, whether they be websites or community mental health agencies that maybe are running support groups or have counselors on standby that perhaps can help guide you through that conversation.
That's wonderful, because I think a lot of us could use that.
Yes, it's not an easy conversation.
No, it's not an easy conversation, not something that has affected our home before, and it is affecting all of us, all of our families in some capacity. Thank you again so much for coming on the show, Sabrina, and sharing such invaluable information with us as to how to help our children during this difficult time.
You're welcome.
Thank you again. If you think your child is having difficulty in school, fearful of crowds, avoiding school, or engaging in any kind of self-destructive behavior, please seek help from a professional or call Sabrina Coppola, founder of Social Butterfly Counseling, located in Wyckoff. And please check in next Thursday with Lawrence Kaufman, owner, agent, Farmers Insurance in Franklin Lakes. We will be discussing natural disasters and how you can make sure you are fully covered. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.